Hello and welcome back. Today we will create our first report using CxReports. So let's get started. We are going to start right here on the home page where under resources and then documentation you have the invoice tutorial on the left side. Now this will guide you through a complete process from an empty workspace to a first report. So we're going to follow this one. In our empty workspace, we're going to go to the themes section and we're going to add a new theme. Now inside of this theme, we are going to define a couple of colors. Primary. And we're going to copy actually the color from here. And this will allow us to have to use this color in multiple places inside of the theme. So for example, under the styling section of text, you can select the heading 1 and then select this specific blue color here. Now this will color the heading 1 accordingly to this color. And in case that in the future we decide to change this color, it will be changed in here and all the other places that we are using it. Now we would like to apply a different font to this theme. So we're going to say it's Inter. The issue is Inter is not by default available, but we can link it from Google. So if you go to Google Fonts, for example, and you type Inter, you can select the first available font. You can go to Get Embed Code. Once this loads, we have this link option. What we are interested in is everything inside of the href. So the whole actual link, we're going to copy. And we're going to go to the external CSS inside of our themes and link the said font. Now, external CSS allows you to do more than just fonts. You can link basically the entire style sheet files, which you would like to use in your theme. Let's say you have a consistent CSS file that you use across multiple applications. You can import that file in here as well and use it inside of your reports. So that would set up the entire fonts on the application, and we can continue on to the table section. So as you have a preview of the text element on the right side when you're in a text tab, if you go to the table element, you have a preview of table element on the right side. Now, out of the box, there aren't any stylings applied. So we're going to create, let's say for the header element, we would like to say it's 1 pixel solid black. And actually we can do it in here and then lock. So all the sides have the same format. And then for the cells, we can say it's 1 pixel dashed light gray. Now this will create a visual separation between each row in form of dashed lines. Now for header, we can say that the header is capitalized. And we can change maybe the font weight to semi-bold to make it more stand out. Let's see if there's anything else in here. Header, cells, we saw the preview, and that would be all from the themes. You can save the theme. From this point, we can continue on to the languages, report types, and page types. Now, these are some of the workspace configuration options. So languages allow you to have multilingual reports where you can have different cultures regarding formatting of numbers and currencies. And also if you're using dictionaries, you can apply different translations based on these languages. So at the moment, I'm just going to add one. It's going to be English. So our code is going to be EN. Now, regarding the culture code, which will apply the actual formatting, we will provide the list down below in the description, but at the moment it's going to be, we're going to use English US. And we're going to save this as our language. Now, report types allow us to categorize reports based on their type. So because we're creating an invoice report, we're going to create an invoice type. invoice type with the code invoice. And page types are the last part that we need to add. So we're gonna, for the moment, just add standard page. And I'll explain what are the pages in a moment. Once we add the languages, report types, and page types, we can continue on to templates. So if we go to templates, we create a new template. We're gonna call it invoice template. And we're gonna say it's it's gonna use our first theme. And if you open it, you can see the page type on the left side that we created a moment ago. Because this is the only one, I'm going to enable it, and we're gonna have a page in front of us. Now this is what we call a template of a page, or page master if you like. And in here, we can specify common elements between all the pages of a report. So in this case, we can set up the page size, the orientation, portrait or landscape. We're gonna stick with portrait. Margins, we're gonna use default margins. And also can change the name or the theme of the specific template. But if I go back to home, I would like to add a couple of elements in here. So I'm going to start with the flow, and I'm going to add it on top of the content placeholder that was present. Now, because it was mistakenly put inside, I would like to put it outside, because placeholder is a place where inside of an actual report we can style and add other elements on every specific page, but everything outside the content placeholder is something that's repeated from page to page and is specified by the template, like a header element. So inside of this flow, I would like to add the text element, and we're gonna call this, let's say, company name. Then in the styling section, we can say it's 24 pixels because we want to make it quite a bit bigger. And we would like to separate this from the rest of the elements on this page. So we're going to put a spacer in here and give it a little bit of spacing. Again, it went in the wrong part. So we can just put a little bit of spacing between the header components and the placeholder. Now we would like to do the same for the footer. So we're gonna add a new flow underneath here, make it a little bit bigger. We're gonna add a text component inside of this flow here. And inside of there, we're gonna align it to the right side. And we would like to use our template to show page number of each page. So how are we going to do that? We're going to get to the specifics, but for now you can copy this from our documentation. Basically what this achieves is it's accessing the internal store of every page, and it's getting its number, and it's accessing to an internal store of a report and getting the total page count. Now in here, because this is only a template, these are not gonna work, but they should work. They should work inside of an actual report. So I'm going to revert the footer to a natural size. I don't want it to take too much of a space on a single page, and we'll come back to the template in the future. And with that, we are now prepared to create our first report. So add a new report. We're gonna call it first invoice with the report type of an invoice and the template invoice template, and we're gonna save. Now you are greeted with this similar editor that you had with the templates, with a couple of key differences, being that the new page button we have in here, which allows you to create new pages, and a couple of components that are specific only for reports. Also, you have a report tab in here, which gives you more control over the actual report, the name, some options that we cover, and the preview of the report as well. So let's add our first page, standard page. Now you can see we're getting the data from the template that we set up. So we have a company in here and we have a page number at the bottom. Now I would like to change this to be a invoice page. But I don't like this company in here. So I'm going to go back to templates and I'm going to change this to Adventure CO. That's a little bit better. So if I go back to the invoice, now you can see that we have a new header, Adventure & Co. And this page is 1 of 1. So let's add a couple of components. First, we can add a text component in here. Invoice and then the number 1111. Now I want this to be a title, or really big, so I'm going to make it 30 pixels. I would like to align it in the middle, and I would like it to have a more of a bold, semi-bold value. Medium, something like that. Now underneath this, I would like to have on the left side information about the customer and on the right side, the information about dates. Now I can do that with the flow. So before that, I'll go to elements and I will expand the tree so you can see what we have in the content of the actual page. So we have only this text component. Now I'm going to add a flow right underneath that. And then in order to facilitate 2 sections or 2 columns, we can do that manually by adding 2 new flows inside, but we can also do a built-in functionality of split, right-click split into 2 columns. So we have a right, left, and right side. If you open this flow, you can see what's actually happening. In this original flow, we added 2 new flows, and both of them have a expand option turned on, so they'll take as much room as they can. Since both of them have it, they'll share 50-50. Now on the left side, we can add a heading element. We can mark it as a heading 4, and we can say build to. And then underneath that, we can add a text element and say John Doe. Underneath that, we can add another text element, and let's call it address. So we'll fill this on with the real data, but let's say for the moment, 41st Street, 41st, new 5555, new New York. Underneath that, let's add a phone number. So, and one more option, let's say an email. Maybe we could separate the phone number and the email with a spacer element, just a little bit. And I would like to separate the title more, just a bit more. Oops, undo. So now we have the build to, and on the right side, we can add another heading. We can make it also the 4, and let's call it details. Details. Now in here, I would like to have on the left side keys, so due date and issue date, and right next to that, the values. Now, in order to align that so they can look really good, so the values of those keys are aligned perfectly, we can do that with style and flows, but also we have a component that's specifically designed for that, which is called key value grid. So I'll drop a key value grid in here. I will configure it. I will say issue date. Let's say 1st of 2024, and add the new one, which is going to be due date 1st, 2nd, 2024. Save. We have these 2 dates now in here, but they are not aligned. So we're going to use the configuration on the right side again to configure the key field width. which is the key on the left side, and we're gonna say, let's say 100 pixels. So we have 100 pixels for the key, and then the value will take everything else. Now this looks okay, but I would like to add a bit more color, especially to these titles. So I can go in here. I can say that I want to have it uppercase, and let's find one of the blue colors in here. Let's take this one, for example. Maybe a bit darker. Now the issue is that we have to do this all over again for this one. So in order to avoid this, we can utilize the themes. So we do it in one place and it's applied automatically to all the heading force elements. So I will go to theme. I'll go to the text, heading 4, text color. Let's say the blue we just looked at. Something like this. We're gonna say, because body has, we're gonna make inter in here as we did before. Should be, yeah, already in here. H4, text color. We're gonna transform it to be fully uppercase, as you can see in here. We're gonna add to be a medium, or maybe even a semi-bold medium. And maybe a little bit darker, like this. So we go back to the template, and now you can see that build to and details both have different styles. Now you can select the flow behind with the tab in here on the left side, and I will revert that to natural size so it doesn't take up any more room than it absolutely needs to. Now we can add a couple of, maybe one more heading at the bottom in here, and we can call this items. So because the table will go next, so items, but we would like to make it heading 4 as well, and maybe a more separation between these two. And we can add a table element. Now we have two tables, data table, which is which will connect to a data source and automatically fill all the data, or a custom table. Because we don't need any custom options at the moment, we're just going to use a standard data table. But we don't have the input, so we're going to just leave this as a placeholder for a moment. And we're going to finish the rest of the elements I want to add. One of them being the notes. Again, heading 4. And then let's add a text element in here. Some note about invoice. Now this note, I would like it to have a fixed width. I know there's not going to be too much data in here. And I would like to add some kind of outline around it. But if I go through the configuration on the right side, you're going to see we have no option for borders or outlines. So I'm going to go in Appearance tab, and in here we have what we call a box style, which is basically a style for every box of elements. And in here you can see the custom CSS. So if I change the height, you can see how it updates automatically. But you can also add your style in here. So I'm going to add mine, which is going to be border 1 pixel, solid, or dashed, maybe light gray. So now we have some dashed style in here. And maybe add just a small separator between these elements. Yeah, this is good. Now, if I preview this, this looks like how invoice you would print out. Problem is, all the data is hard-coded. So this is not really useful for us because we have to change everything in here. Now, in order to utilize the powerful mechanism behind CxReports, we would have to add our first data source. So we can go back to the invoice tutorial. And one of the things you can find under the report section here is JSON data. And we're going to copy this for the moment. I'm going to go under report, and in here you have options to add dictionaries, parameters, or data sources. So we're gonna focus on data sources now. We can add a new data source. We can name it Invoice. And since we don't have any other, we're gonna create a new. And in here we have quite a few options for data sources. They can be SQL queries, where you connect to a database and write your own query in here. They can be APIs, so you would fetch the data from a remote API. It can be static, like a JSON or CSV, or it can be a JavaScript data source where you can do some slight data manipulation in order to get exactly what you need. MongoDB and Google Sheets are also available, but we are focusing on JSON at the moment. We're gonna paste the values that we copied, and you can see in here, if I expand this, we have an invoice number, we have a date issued, due date, we have information about recipient, we have items for our table, and we have some information about subtotal, tax rate, amounts, totals, and notes. Now, this is all data that we need in order to create an invoice. So we're gonna save this. And if I open the report show available data tab in here, you can see all the keys, that are available for our report. So you can see that under $data, since we're accessing data sources, we're always going to go to $data, and then key name invoice. We have available information about our invoice. So we're going to utilize these keys in order to access the inside information and show them in the report itself. So if you go, let's say we want to change the invoice number to dynamically populate, we would use $data, invoice, and then invoice number. So let's do that right now. Instead of invoice number 111, I'm going to say invoice number. I'm going to leave that part, but now I'm going to use string template, what we call. So it's curly braces notation. When we use curly braces only once, this means that we want to access something inside of the data store. And we're going to go curly braces, so $data, as we saw, name of the data source, invoice, and then the value we want to access, in this case, invoice number. So if I click outside of this, now you can see we have invoice number 12345. Just like in here, we are accessing the data. So we're going to go build to, we're going to John Doe. It's not going to be John Doe. It's going to be $data, invoice, recipient name, ABC Enterprises. This is going to be, again, we can copy from here and call address. In here, copy again and call it phone. And the last one is going to be email. Now this looks good, but I would like this title. Now I'd like this to be a bit bigger. So it's going to be a font size of maybe 15 pixels. Maybe font weight of semi-bold, maybe even bigger, maybe 18 pixels. Just to emphasize the actual name, maybe less, let's say 16. Now I would like these headings to be just a little bit more dark, so like this, and they're going to be medium. So we have build to, details, items, and notes. Now we can go on the right side. We can also use the information inside of our data store to access the date, issue, and due date. So we again go to configure option of the key value grid, issue date, and the value. We're going to use the data store access notation. So $data, invoice as a data source we want to access, and it's going to be issue date or date issue, I believe. While the other one is due date. And yeah, I missed it. Date issued. Issued. And we have the data from the store. The problem here is these dates are exactly like they're stored in the database. They're not the dates we would like to use, the format that we would like to have in this report. So what we can do is add a formatting option on this key that we access from the store. And we can use that utilizing colon and then letter D. This is going to say that whatever is underneath this key, it should try to format it like a date. And we can use the same thing in here, colon D. Save. And now we have formatted dates. Now, these are also very similar. Maybe I would like to put bold on the date part. So I can go under key values, styling, key value grid, keys, common styling. I'm not going to change anything in there. Keys, I'm not going to change anything in there, but values, I would like to make them semi-bold. So now we have a bit more pronounced dates. And we get to our data. If you go to show available data, you can see that all of these are actually objects, JavaScript objects in the store, apart from one, which is in this case items, which is the array. Table will automatically scan all available data and try to find the rows, try to find the arrays which it can utilize to show. So we're detecting only one, data invoice items, and we can select it. Now you can see the message changes to please configure columns. If I go to column settings, you can see that we have no columns in here. So we can add them manually, but the easier option is just to generate it based on the data we already have in there. So generate, and now we have full table in here. I'm going to revert it to a natural size. I'm going to add a separator, spacer. I don't really like how it looks like, so I'm going to go back into themes, under tables, and I'm going to turn off this locking, and I'm going to delete all the options apart from just the bottom one. Now this looks much better. Now this is good. So now we have styling of the table complete. We have 4 columns: description, quantity, unit price, and total. Description is all pretty much done. Quantity also, we have numbers, so they're aligned on the right side, as well as unit price and totals. But I would like to have a currency sign in front of unit price and totals, and I would like to always to have 2 decimal points here. So I'm going to go into column settings, which is no longer empty since we generated columns. And in here we have a lot of configuration options. So we're going to dedicate a couple of videos, actually a whole series or 2, just to this table configuration. But for the moment, we are going to focus on unit price and totals. In unit price, under content section in here, you can see we format it as a number. But I would like to change that to custom formats and then look for the currency. And we're going to use default currency at the moment. And the same applies for the totals. So custom and default currency. You can see we offer quite a few for out of the box formatting options, and you can also write using this template, maybe even more customizable one. So default currency and save. Now we have the currency sign and we have the currency values as decimal, always showing 2 decimal points. So let's add totals to this table. That's also easy to do. In the first column, under the footer and caption options, I'm going to open that and I'm going to enable footer. I'm going to write total in here. So that's going to be under first column, and under the last column, I'm going to enable footer again. But now I'm going to sum the values of this column when using field total, and I'm going to leave everything else empty. So if I save now, you can see the total is showed underneath the first column, and we have the sum underneath the last column in here. And now I can preview this report, and you can see we have pretty decent report. Now, one more thing I would like to add here is, well, let's add a logo to this page. So we have, let's say, a company logo. I'm going to go to templates, invoice template. And if I go to elements, you can see this flow is now horizontal flow. We have a heading here, a text here with the company name, and we can add an image right underneath that, or in this flow actually. So it's gonna be on the right side. And also I would like to have company name on the left and the logo all the way on the right. So I'm gonna add a spacer in between and I'm going to expand it. Now this is not an image of a logo, but we're gonna use one of the AdventureWorks logos in here. So I'm gonna replace the value of the URL here and I'm gonna make it way smaller, like this, just to be visible. I'm gonna go back to the reports and you can see now we have a logo with the company name and all the other values available right here and the page number 1 of 1. So what's left is to have the same note about invoice. We forgot to do that. So we can copy the data from the invoice. Let's say this one in here. And we're going to write in here with notes. In order to check if everything is correct, you can always turn off the binding option, which will turn off the binding data from the data store. And you can see the keys that you use in order to get the data. So in this case, invoice number, and then the key that we use to get the invoice, and all the information about recipients, the dates, and the notes. So I see everything is okay, and I'm going to turn off the binding. So now we're at the stage where report is done. We would like to export it and see how it looks like in a real PDF. So we can go in the report section and then export PDF, which will start the export process. First time it can take a little bit of time, but usually it's fast. And here it is, our first downloaded PDF report of an invoice that we created. And you can see it looks pretty much the same. Next thing you can do is you can integrate this report with your application via API. Now the way to do this is we will be utilizing report types. If you go back to documentation, you can see under section generating PDFs using API, you can find the detailed instructions on how to do this. But basically this URL is important. We have to send GET request to our server, followed with the API view version 1, workspace ID report, and then the report type code. Why is that? So this will allow you to have one report type and one report designated to this type. You can use this URL in your application. And in the future, when you decide to change this report, you can create a new version alongside the first one, make the necessary changes, and then just change the default version of the report under report types, and then edit the default report. So we're going to say that our first invoice now is the default. In the future, you can change it to a different report. You don't have to change the URL. We're going to go to Postman for this. We're going to create a new request. And we're going to copy the URL of our instance. We're going to say we're targeting the API / version 1 / workspaces /1 / reports / invoices invoice and /pdf. Now this URL is not going to work because this request is not authorized to see it. The way to do this is to create a personal access token as described in here, and then set authorization to bearer. You can find that under your profile settings and then personal access token. We can generate a new token. We can call it Postman, and we set the expiration to never. You'll get the actual token, and you have to copy this because once we close this, you're not going to be able to see it again. We go back to the Postman, we go to the authorization, we set the authorization to bearer token, and we paste the new token. Now if I send the request, we are getting the PDF of the invoice. This is all great, but it's not really useful since every time we send a request, we're going to get the same result. The way to change this on this specific invoice, the way we created it is we need to change the data source. Now we don't want to change it in here. So we give you an option to send the data that will override this original data in here every time you generate a new report. So for example, I'm gonna copy this original data. And I'm gonna go back in here and see how to do it. The way to do this is to find the temporary data API that CxReports offers. Now in this case, it's a post request, again on a specific URL. So we're gonna go back to Postman. We're gonna duplicate this tab. So it's going to be version 1/temporary/1/temporary data. Now, what you need to send in here is you need to send a body as a raw format. So it's going to be a JSON object. Key is content. And the values are the key as a name of the data source we are overriding and the data that we are sending. So in our case, if we go back to data sources, you can see we are overriding invoice. So we're going to say invoice, and we're going to paste the data that we copied. Now this won't do much for us because it's the same as it was before. So I'm going to change the ABC Enterprises into Jane Doe. Change the phone number to, let's say, 000, invoice number to 9876. And I'm going to add a couple of more products in here. So I'm going to copy one of them, paste. So it's going to be products 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 4 and 5. So now we have 5 new items in here. We can send this request again because we duplicated. We have this request is also authorized, and as a response, we're getting nothing because it's a post request. And we get the temporary data ID 6. So just to show you that we didn't change the original report, if I send again this original request, we're going to get the ABC Enterprises with 2 products. But now I'm going to attach as a query parameter temp data ID with the value 6, and I'm going to send the request. And you can see now that we have a build to Jane Doe with 5 items, and the totals have changed altogether. I hope that was helpful and that we managed to get you from the empty workspace to an actual report. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down below or contact us via support email. I'll see you in the next one.